Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Good morning, everybody. Now, if you're wondering, if your first question is Coffee with Campus Consultancy starting at 10, we're starting at 10 today because we have a very special guest live streaming in the second biggest media event of the 8th of May, 2020, all the way from WA. So we're adjusting for WA time, which is awesome. We're joined by the wonderful Kate. And after this quick little introduction, we're going to tell you all about who is Kate Kerwin and why are we here today. Kate, good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
It's good to have you here. If you're joining us, if you're tuning in this morning and watching, let us know that you're here. Jump in the comments. What are you up to this morning on this wonderful Friday? And as you're starting to warm up, I'd love to turn it over to Kate. Kate, one, I really appreciate you coming today.
Thanks.
Two, yeah, it's awesome to have you here. I'd love to know I'd love you to tell everyone a little bit about who is Kate Kerwin? Why did you join me today? And what are we going to be talking about today?
Yeah, so hi everyone. So I'm Kate. As we mentioned, I'm from WA. So it's still 8 o'clock somewhere. So we're not totally breaking the tradition.
True. That's so true. Of course.
Still 8 o'clock.
Still 8 o'clock.
So I founded something called She Codes Australia. So we're a coding workshop for women, all about how we can get more representation of diversity in technology. And just trying to come up with radically different ways to do that. So working with businesses so that they can fund places for women to learn and to actually have that translate into jobs and try and move that needle a little bit faster. I'm also really passionate about entrepreneurship. So I work for a co-working space here in Perth when I'm not at home, working in a co-working space with entrepreneurs and innovators and people doing cool stuff.
Amazing. I'd love to dig into the why a little bit, if that's okay. And this is a topic today where I'm coming very much from a place of curiosity and I really want to learn. I'd love to hear your insights. When we talk about pulling apart stereotypes, it's a big topic and there's a lot that goes into it. So I'd love to know, when it comes to founding your own organization, what was the need? What was the purpose? What was the why behind that for you?
Yeah, so I started working for this co-working space about 5.5 years ago and had no background in technology or innovation or entrepreneurship or anything. Super fresh. I had done events and I'm really good at events. So I started in an events role and a community role as well, trying to get to know people in the community. Yeah. And I felt like there were so many things that I didn't know because there were a lot of things I didn't know. So I went to as many things as possible, like you were saying, trying to be curious and just trying to learn as much as possible. So one of the things that I went to was an hour of code presentation that someone in the community was running. And I found it so fascinating. Like, I'm quite a creative person. I really like to paint and to bake and create things. I think there's something magical about starting with nothing and making something. And code kind of felt like that for me, trying to, start with just a bunch of lines of gibberish and then it ends up doing something that works. But then I was looking around of trying to learn more and the communities that existed. So there's the super technical meetups that are really high level. They're really masculine. They're quite intimidating. And then there was like going down a formal education university kind of route. And I'm like, I'm not quite there yet. I'm just playing around.
Yes.
And then, so someone else in the community was like, I want to do something for women to teach them to code, but I don't want to run it because that's kind of weird. I'm a guy and it feels a bit awkward. And I don't know how to run events. Could you help me? And I'm like, sure. I can do that. They're two things that I like doing. And then it kind of snowballed from there. So we got more demand than we know what to do with. And the more that we kind of dug into the problem, realizing that there's so many more, there's so much more to it. There's so many more organizations that need developers. There's so many people who want to learn. And we've been kind of pushed by demand from there. So it started off as trying to solve my own problem of how do I learn stuff, and then has snowballed into this whole thing of how do we support all of those other women out there that are just like me that also don't learn stuff.
Yes. When do you think the idea of coding I know you mentioned you went there and you saw coding at that event, but when did coding even cross your mind? Like, did that come up in school? Was it formally introduced to you in any sort of education, or was it something you kind of just stumbled upon and across?
Yeah, it was pretty accidental, to be honest. Hadn't really done anything at school or university in that technology space. I think I'm young. I think I'm quite technologically literate.
Yes.
I work in the innovation space and play around with a lot of different technology all the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, never had really formally been introduced kind of before that moment. And then that moment was like, oh, why have I not done this before? This seemed to me, from stereotypes, like we're going to talk about, this super intimidating, impossible thing that I'm never going to be able to do. And then actually, you can do something, you can learn something in a couple of hours.
What do you think was intimidating? I'd love to know what was intimidating about it at the start. One of the things you mentioned was that idea of, like, you're going to these events and they were like super masculine. And I'm wondering when it comes to pulling apart these ideas and pulling apart the idea of maybe events that perpetuate them, I'm wondering if is there something integral, or is there something, maybe that's the wrong word, is there something structural, in the way that we're putting events together in certain industries that continues stereotypes? And is there a better way to do it? Have you seen a way that's like you can recreate actually that environment for an event such that it is much more inclusive?
Yeah, so I think the things that really scared me is the language that we're using. So a lot of these things are so technical that even now I go to some of those events and I'm still not a developer. I'm going to, put that out. I'm still very much a beginner. It's been 4 years, but I'm still learning. But we're not talking in English anymore. We're talking in like super technical. And there's so much jargon that even concepts that aren't actually that hard, when you're talking in a totally different language, you can get really intimidated of like, oh, no, I don't understand the 4 words you just said. I'm clearly not meant to be here. I'm not smart enough.
Yeah.
And it's really easy to do that when you don't understand what someone's talking about. When if we can just use simpler language, I think that makes a massive difference in just making people feel welcome.
Yes.
And the other thing is just the physical like makeup of the event. So a lot of these things that I were going to, I would be the only woman in the room. And there was even one a few weeks ago that was in our space. So the place that I work at, and I was wearing a bright green dress. I've got pink hair, fairly bright. I was wearing high heels, super loud, clacky high heels. And I walked into the room and every single person there was wearing black, grey or white T-shirts and jeans. And the presentation was in the middle of talking and the entire room turned and stared at me. And I'm like, hi.
Oh, wow. That's terrifying.
I'm a go. I'm not meant to be here. And I think that's so, like, I'm quite confident. I know a lot of the people there. I was in a space that I feel comfortable and safe. And I still felt really intimidated. So for those people who it's their first time coming to something like that, that's so intimidating.
Yeah. That's interesting. Was it like when people turned around, was it just surprise? Like, is it something in this idea of like pulling apart? And I think where I want to dig into with you a little bit is about the danger of like the preconceptions and the assumptions that are embedded within stereotypes. So it's like when you expect a certain thing. So like when people turn around and they see someone there, as you say, quite bright, like heels, pink hair, like when they see that, was it just, did you go, okay, I've messed up this dress code? Or did you assume that they were thinking a certain thing about you? Or did you get some sort of evidence or indication, or that they were thinking a particular thing. I'd love to know where do you think that connection comes in of, okay, they see heels, they see pink hair. Where do you think people's minds go?
Yeah, so I think definitely surprise is like what I wasn't expecting someone to walk in right now.
Sure.
And it was like a few minutes, like the person had just started speaking, so they started a presentation. So it was quite quiet in the room. And I wasn't actually there for that event. I was just coming in to pick something up. But yeah, definitely surprise. And then I think there's like almost a little bit of you're not expecting it. Like it's something really out of the box. I don't fit into the assumption of what you would think that a person who's coming to that kind of event would be. And I think, that's the really interesting thing about these stereotypes is that we have all these preconceived ideas of what we're expecting.
Yeah. And when you see especially with she codes, when you start working with women, is there a general age group that you start working with, or is it really varied?
So it's pretty varied at our workshops. So we've had from 5 through to 80. So very, very broad. But we're mostly, so our longer programs are mostly working kind of 20 to 50 professional women who are looking to change careers.
Yeah. And when people come for, say, their first workshop, do you hear any of the same, or do you hear some sort of similar trends or themes around not just the skill set, but the perception of the skill set? Like, do you hear people worrying about, I don't know if this is for me because I'm X, or I don't have Y education, or because I didn't learn this in school, or I didn't grow up with it? Because I think all of those, there's obviously lots of different areas you can look at, whether it's age, whether it's gender, or whether it's level of intelligence, or whether it's family background and economic status. What kind of, obviously you've got she codes, which is a demographic for sure, but I'd love to know what comes up. Like what are those common kind of concerns, if there are any, or are there none, and people come in, they're like, yeah, we're excited, let's go.
Yeah, so I think at the beginning, definitely there's a lot of like, I didn't think that there would be this many other people around that are like me. I know, we're right. And there's, that's that surprise of, oh my gosh, there's this many other people out here. That's so surprising that other people would also be interested in this thing that I'm interested in.
Yes.
And then we also get a lot of the fear of my parents told me that I couldn't do this because I'm a woman, or my teachers have pushed me into whatever because I've heard a lot of technology isn't a safe career pathway. I've heard that a lot of times, which is crazy. They've been pushed into accounting or law. It's a safer career pathway, where the reality is that those industries are going to be automated way faster than technology will be.
Yes.
But there's still those perceptions of this is still almost a little bit cowboy. Like it's still scary. And
is there is there a bit of cowboy in the coding world, or cowgirl, or cow person?
Yeah, I think there definitely is a little bit. You know,
do you kind of love that though? Like, I get the vibe that you might kind of love that it's a little bit still like,
there's a bunch of people making stuff up. We're just making stuff up, hoping for the best. And the best developers are people that Google stuff.
Oh,
they're just Googling stuff.
Kate, can you say that one more time, just because I just want to clip it and share it with literally every student I ever have in a workshop? So what's one of the best ways to become a great developer, Kate?
Just Google stuff.
Fantastic.
Just Googling, cutting and pasting. That is how you become a developer.
The fact that you can go to Google and learn almost anything right now is what I think one of the most underappreciated resources that we are so fortunate to have. Like, if you're in Australia and you can get to a library with an internet connection, and you know that you have a safe roof over your head to go back to at night, and you can carve out an hour or two in your day to go to that library, use a free computer, go onto Google, the things you can learn just by Googling them, mind-blowing. So like, how does one start a LinkedIn live show? Googled it. How does one stream on LinkedIn? Googled it. How do you add a logo on? Googled it. Like, good topics to talk about on a live show. Googled it. Like, how to send a cold invite. Googled it. It's just amazing when you stack it up, right?
And it's even like actually writing a line of code. If you don't know how to do a thing, go to somebody else's code, copy it, and then try it, see if it does the thing that you expected it to.
Yes.
If it doesn't, you can edit it and try and Google someone else's code and sort of smush some things together. Obviously, gets a little bit out of control sometimes, but if you're learning, definitely don't be afraid to just try Googling things. I think one of the really cool things in our programs is when our mentors get asked a question and they're like, oh, yeah, I actually don't know what the syntax for that is. I'll just look it up.
Yeah.
And then people are like, but you've been coding your whole life? I'm like, yeah, I don't remember what kind of semicolon it is. I always just look it up. And I think there's that aha moment of like, oh, the experts also don't know? Oh,
Yes.
It's not just me. Okay, cool.
This is so good. This is such an important insight. And I think when people are looking at pulling apart stereotypes, whether you're students, your staff members, your founders, you want to start a business, this idea of I can't do this because insert stereotype here.
Yeah.
Like, it's just the worst line of code ever written. And I think one of the things that I found to be really helpful with that, just at least in my experience, of like, I started a business with no business experience. I was like, you can't do that sort of thing, And one of the things that helped me was like, to get over that imposter syndrome was find anybody else who's ever done it and go, oh, if they can do it, if they broke that pattern, then that's not a universal law, but it's a theme or it's a trend. And maybe that theme or trend is massively outdated. And we're running this social enterprise project at the moment. We had a guest speaker come in week 1, Shelley. She runs Body Positive Health and Fitness. It's a social enterprise. She's amazing. And she shared this insight where she said, when she was starting a business, she went walking down a street in St. Kilda in Melbourne. Walked around, looked to the left, there's a business there. Looked to the right, there's a florist. Looked to the left, there's a hairdresser. Look to the right, there's an accountant, whatever. All these businesses. And she said she looked around, she had this moment where she said, they can't all be geniuses. Like, everyone who's ever started a business can't just be the most genius person ever in the world. And it was this unlock. And when we asked students at the end of the workshop, like, oh, what did you get out of Shelley's story? She was amazing, blah, blah, blah. They said that moment where she said, oh, these people aren't like, not everyone has to be a genius to do these things. They've just taken a series of steps and chipped away at it line by line. I just love that idea of like breaking it down, not knowing something, going to Google, finding the answer. And then you're a step further on the path.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that the other thing that we always say at my big workshops, so they're free public workshops. We have like 150 women per event. It's a bit crazy.
Amazing.
But I actually say at the beginning, like, it is a win for me if you learn something. It's a win for me if you meet someone else that you haven't met before that you might want to talk to sometime again in the future. Doesn't have to be a friend, but you've met a person.
Yes.
It's also a win for me if you realize you hate it.
Yes.
At least you haven't spent your whole life wondering, or you haven't spent a whole heap of time and money doing something super expensive and then feeling guilty because you don't like it. Like, you've tried. That's cool. It didn't work.
Yeah.
There's a million other things out there.
It's so good. It's so good. Where do you think that, I couldn't agree with you more on everything you just said. I love it. Where do you think that fits in terms of this idea of trying things quite quickly, like a very agile, lean startup-y kind of approach to lifestyle design or career choice or relationship choice or who knows what else, where you like to go traveling, whatever it is? Where do you think the role of trying lots of things out and it being okay if your takeaway is, that's really not for me, where does that fit in the idea of busting up and pulling apart and challenging stereotypes, which tend to say, because of this arbitrary, maybe not even fact, because of this arbitrary thing, you therefore X as a sweeping statement?
Yeah, well, I think it's much easier to disprove some of those things if you've tried them. I think we're coming from this place of safety of like, oh, if I'm in this bubble and if I don't get out of this bubble, then I can control the things in here. But if I'm trying something new that might be a bit scary and I might hate it, that's kind of makes me really feel really uncomfortable. I'll just come back to my bubble. But But then when you try those things, then it's so much easier to be like, oh, I did that one thing that one time and it was okay. And I met some other people who were pretty cool, and they were okay. Maybe I can also be like that person and try a little bit more.
I love the idea of the bubble. Can you tell me a little bit more about this bubble idea and how, if people are out there and they're like, oh, I think I'm in a bubble, like if they just had that penny drop moment, they're like, wow, I could be in a bubble right now. What could people do to challenge it? Is it safe to just pop the bubble, or what does it look like to push the edges on that?
Yeah, so I think just try and do something that's like a tiny bit scary. So what is a tiny, tiny, tiny bit scary? That's not like jumping off a cliff,
Yes.
but just going to a community where you don't really maybe know everything. And just kind of dip your toes in, and then you can try and be a little bit more confident in each time and dip your toes in a little bit further. But I think definitely going through those little baby steps, we don't need to jump right off the cliff right on day one.
Yeah. I love that. What's the role there have you seen in community? Because I couldn't agree more. And I think one of the best techniques I've ever seen is get around where it's better. Get around where, and better could be challenging, better could be more caring, better could be push you more, push you less. But what's the role of community in helping people go, you know what, I'm not going to let the list of things, of arbitrary data points on my life, which change anyway, I'm not going to let the list say that I can't do this thing. How does community sort of support or unlock that?
Yes, I'm a massive community fan. I think that there are so many different groups out there that are specific to locations, they're specific to interest groups, they're specific to feelings. Like there's so many different groups out there that you can kind of shop around and figure out, maybe I'm this kind of group, maybe I'm not that kind of group. And I think a lot of people are really welcoming and want to give. They want to help.
Yes.
In the space that I work in technology, a lot of the guys that I work with, they're like, oh my God, I would love to have more women in the community. And like, I would be like, anything they need, just let me know. If it's mentoring, if it's support, like tell us how we can help. And I think that's a lot of different communities are like that. If you just ask for help, a lot of people are willing to give it.
I love it. I want to ask you one question on that, and then I want to segue into something you just said. The first question is, if people are looking for communities, as you said, they're out there, how do they find them? And I'm guessing it's a 6-letter answer starting with G, but I'll let you tackle that. And then the second where I want to go is, as you say, so many, in this case where it's like women in coding, men in coding, so many men are willing to help. What do you think the role is of pulling apart stereotypes for people who don't identify with the stereotype, but also want to challenge it? So first, where do people go to find communities? And then if we can segue into how can all people support each other if it's an industry or an area that they care about?
Yeah, some communities are definitely Google stuff. If you're a Facebook kind of person, find a Facebook group. They're usually very non-creatively named, like women in entrepreneurship.
in Adelaide, or women, I like it.
Very specific, conveniently named.
Yes.
And that could be when we're talking about baby steps. Maybe it's joining a Facebook group and just chatting and answering some posts if you don't feel comfortable going to a physical meetup and meeting people. Just dip your toes in. If you want to go to a physical event, when we're allowed to again, places like meetup.com have lots of different meetups on lots of different topics. I'm obviously super biased, but co-working spaces often have lots of different events in the business, technology, innovation, entrepreneurship sort of space, and those kind of resources. So if it's a co-working space, if it's I don't know, like a library or a sports centre, or the place that exists to support people of that kind of thing, often are the place to go for those kinds of events. So I think just figuring out what kind of system works for you, if you're a just typing to people person, or if you're a going to see people in person kind of person. And then the second question. So definitely. I think that the really weird thing about stereotypes is that most people don't actually fit those stereotypes. So even the
Yes.
people who seem like they should fit the stereotypes don't fit the stereotypes. So most men that I know, so the stereotype for technology, right? Like it's a bunch of guys sitting in a basement eating pizza in the dark, with their little hoodies, the hacker faces. That's what we keep seeing in the media and in movies.
Yes.
I think that I don't know a single person that has ever done that, ever in their life, sat in a basement wearing a hoodie. So yeah, I think that's where going to find those communities, even seeing the guys that are like, yeah, I would never do that, instantly that stereotype then can just die, because you're like,
Yes.
okay, cool. There's nobody like that. There's not even some people or a majority of people. There's nobody like that. Let's try and find out what a more realistic person is.
Okay, you just gave me such a nice little penny drop moment there around that idea of the role of someone who's not identifying with that particular stereotype. So say in this case, like men in tech, to leave the whole thing of the women in tech leaving that alone, but breaking your own stereotype of like breaking the thing of like, well, the stereotype of like, it's a dude thing that's just for dudes in a basement, and to be like, I'm a dude who would love other people to be here and I don't want to be in a basement. Like you could break your own, which is almost the yin to the yang of the stereotype. Like you kind of need both of them. If someone doesn't belong there, then, well, someone has to belong there. And what if those people go, you know what, actually, we want this to change too. And it's almost
100.
like, but I don't know
100.
if that, is that too, could that be too like you're avoiding the issue, or is it, it's actually not kind of your issue to speak on and focus on what you can control? I have no idea what the answer is.
No, I think definitely talking about your experiences. I think everyone's experiences are valid, and maybe that is that baby step of just like, I'm not going to be maybe a super champion advocate for women and do everything, but I'm just going to tell the world, like, I'm actually not a guy sitting in a basement, and that's cool. That's my little bit to break down that stereotype. And then obviously you can go further in supporting initiatives, just trying to break down things in other ways. I think one of the other really cool stories that I have is we were at a workshop a couple of years ago, and so I told you there's 150 women. We have about 20 mentors. I make them all wear purple branded shirts, bright purple, the guys and the girls. And we usually have about 50-50 male to female mentors. And I had a guy come up to me and he's like, so I feel really uncomfortable being one of like maybe 15 guys in a room with 150 women and wearing bright purple. And I've never felt this before. Is this how you feel when you come to events and people look at you kind of funny? And is this how you feel? Like, yeah, this is how we feel every day. And they were like, I thought that I understood this. I really thought that I understood this. And like they'd come to events before, they'd like, amazing human. I had never felt that uncomfortable before because they hadn't been in that place of being a minority or feeling like they didn't fit in. So that's a really powerful thing to do as well. When you are the majority or you are the stereotype or whatever, just try and get some empathy by being in that place of like, oh, yeah, maybe this is weird. Maybe this is uncomfortable.
Yes. It's a great story. And the closest thing I had to that was I had one at a University of Melbourne. They have a great WISE, Women in Science and Engineering, is there women in tech? I always say, because we work with so many student clubs, the women in tech, the women in banking, the acronyms are always so clever. It's just so good. And then like, it's so good. Like the WISE acronym I love, and the group was they have this networking event, and it's like employers come in, they talk about, as you'd imagine, careers in women, careers in STEM for women, etc. And 150 people there were two guys, myself and one other. And I had that experience of like sitting at a dinner and like really hearing like some of the stories and the initiatives, and just like fiercely intelligent. Like I have a bachelor degree, like an honors where I had to teach myself MATLAB, where I learnt it all off Google as well. So I can relate, but like a bachelor's degree, almost everyone in the room, masters, PhD. So fiercely intelligent, enormous careers ahead, and many in the middle of, and it was a really interesting experience just to be, especially because it was like one of the main reasons I left engineering was I was on a construction site, which was like the epitome of hyper masculine. It's always someone's fault. Like it's almost a competition of who can like yell the most and get one up on each other. And I thought it was so toxic for me. It wasn't good for me. I didn't like who I was letting myself become in that environment. And this was like a few years later, you know, a couple of life changes, but this was the complete opposite. And for me, I was like, oh, I never saw this at university. Like maybe it was there and I just wasn't in the rooms, but the landscape had shifted so much. And with the landscape of work shifting, with such a move towards technology, such a move towards human skills as well, and that ability to have both, to be really good with humans and really good with technology, and then how do they come together? There was an energy in the room that I never felt before. And I was like, obviously felt a little bit uncomfortable, maybe not obviously, but I did. I was like, I've just never been one of 150 in a room. But I love the comfort in discomfort part of that. And then the empathy that comes with like, oh, if I was always in my engineering lectures when there was 400 of us and there was like 5, 6, 7 women who'd sort of sit together, and I just like, it always felt not, maybe not right's the right word, but it didn't feel like, there was a funny energy about it. It didn't, I was like, this doesn't seem representative of talent, of interest, of capacity, of, it wasn't what I was hearing when we were out talking about it. And just, it was so nice. It was so nice and powerful, is not even the right word. It was just it was a different energy. I don't even have the words for it.
And I think it's so good when we can have, I actually personally hate women's events that are like super, we have to be all about women and men can't come kind of thing.
Yeah, I can understand.
And it's actually in our values. I've written it into our values that we're female focused, but we're male friendly. And that's really important to me, of like opening up that conversation, because it's so good when we have advocates and we can bring people into that space of like, you know, come and experience and be a champion or be uncomfortable or whatever it is.
Yeah. Female focused, male friendly. I like that. If someone's out there and they're thinking, okay, today's Friday, and if I'm going to do one thing on my Friday, I'm going to do one proactive thing, whether there's a great resource they should watch, whether there's a book that I could challenge a mindset, whether there's something that you would recommend people Google, or anything else. If there's something that you would just, if in a world where hundreds or maybe thousands of people might watch this, and there's just a chance where they might all go, you know what, whatever Kate says next, we're going to do it. If people were to do one thing, take that first step today, what's one practical thing that people might do or think about doing?
I think just try something. So just try something kind of random. It doesn't have to be towards a particular pathway. It doesn't have to be something you want to do for the rest of your life, but just try something that's outside of your comfort zone that you haven't tried before. And make a commitment to doing that within whatever period of time feels comfortable. So if it's a couple of weeks or if it's in the next month, but just time box that of like, I'm going to do something random that isn't towards a pathway, just trying something.
Yes.
Definitely do that. If you're interested in technology, there's so many resources that are amazing that you can learn to code. There's lots of things that are designed for kids that I actually do recommend for adults because they're really fun.
That's cool.
So don't feel afraid to look up a kids tutorial to start with, because personally I like to work with games when I'm learning a thing. But there's also other people that really like the practical side of things. So if you're a practical person, maybe learn to build a website. If you just want to play around with turtles running around in space, do that too. We've got tutorials on the She Codes website. Code Academy is really good. Google has a game called Grasshopper that you can download on your phone to learn JavaScript. There's honestly millions of tutorials. And if you want to reach out, I'm around. So you'll probably have me somewhere on, find me somewhere on LinkedIn, or you can reach out to Josh and he can connect us if you can't find me. always welcome to a conversation. Oh,
Awesome.
there we go.
Wonderful.
There's a link.
Pop it up down the bottom, Kate, that's amazing. And there's so many people have jumped in and some really nice insights. Really thankful for some people jumping in on the comments on Facebook too. Iris and Katie saying, I totally agree, had the same experience. It's a great insight. People on LinkedIn very much relating it, saying good morning, saying they're watching, learning from your interest and passing it on to others is what Emma said she's going to be doing with this. So that's awesome. Kate, thanks for your time today. Good luck with everything. I hope one day when very soon, hopefully maybe today, when some COVID stuff's lifted, when we're back over in WA, I'll definitely be dropping in and saying hello. And I'd love to come to an event sometime with a bright purple hoodie on, or find a purple shirt to wear. I'd love to come along. Awesome.
You're always welcome.
I appreciate you. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming on. Everyone, thank you for tuning in. It's been episode 20. We'll be live again next week at 8 a.m. ASAEST. I think that's correct. We'll have to do some more 10 a.m.ers and open some more stuff up for the Perth audience, because I think this has been really fun and some really great engagement too. So we'll see you next week. Have a wonderful weekend. Stay safe out there, and do that one thing in the next month. Time box it, at least. That's outside of your comfort zone, as Kate said. Couldn't recommend that enough. All right, all. Have a great Friday and a great weekend. Cool.